Hello students, here we are on our very last module. Hooray. Okay, so we're going to cover module 16 in just 1 week. It's actually designed that way. And so the pages you'll be filling in today will just be whatever we cover today will be on that one page or that one area of the book. Okay, so that brings us, of course, to the end of our year as far as lectures go. But as you know, next week you have a project to present to class. Okay, so I wanted to start by showing you what I was expecting for that. Okay, so we talked last week or week before last when we looked at the when we did the Zoom class about taking your PowerPoint, because you're going to make a PowerPoint about something about the ocean, right? And then you're going to send that to me, or we're going to try to Zoom the class. This is next week, y'all. We're going to Zoom the class next Tuesday, and I'm going to look at your presentations. Okay, remember, if we were in class, you would be standing in front of the class. Here, you'll be standing in front of the Zoom class, essentially. So what you're going to do, I have this little video right here to show you how to record your PowerPoint. Okay, so let's say you've got your PowerPoint ready to go. There it is. All right, here goes my video. Hold on. All right, so you're going to come up there to slideshow, see where the yellow dot is, and then look to the right there. It says record slideshow. And then you're going to start recording from the beginning. Mine's from this current slide right there. Then it tells you, okay, start recording. And then it starts. Okay, so it's recording right now. And then you will start to click through. I did this because I was trying to include the bottom part of the slide. You don't have to do that. And so now you'll just start talking and tell me what's on your slide. Either you're going to read that or you're going to, show a picture, something like that. Okay, so this is going to be our lecture today. And that's how it's going to work. Okay, and once you've got it recorded, then you can, you don't have to talk in front of the class live. Okay, so this way you can be able to have it pre-recorded. If you don't like it, you can start over. If that happens, just make sure that when you close it, you have to actually, to get out of that recording mode, you'll have to close the program and just say don't save. If you do like it, then when you close it, make sure to say save. Okay, and then what we'll do is that we'll do some screen sharing through it seems like y'all all knew how to do all that stuff, so I'm counting on y'all to be to help me run next week's class meeting. If you're not comfortable with that, you can actually record the whole thing and email it to me. Make sure and email it to my Gmail address so I can open it properly. I'll open it up in Drive and Google Drive, and then I can put it in from over here, I think, as far as I know I can. Okay? All right. So if you need to, I'll put all this into the when I send this to you, I'll email this information to you so you know that next week is when we're doing that. Okay? All right, so the project is kind of a big part of your deal, your grades, so make sure and get that done. Okay, sorry it has to be done this way. All right, now we're on page 99 of your student workbook, and you're going to start filling in some blanks, okay? So we're looking at the human impact on the oceans and our responsibilities and things like this. So our first blank here, habitat damage can be direct or indirect. So what are some ways the habitats can be changed directly or directly damaged, and what are some ways they're indirectly affected? So let's take a look at some of those. Direct ways include when we're trawling. Remember we saw that video about the boat that was pulling the trawl down beneath it, and it was just pulling up all those rocks and making that mess and cutting down anything in its way and catching anything in its way. So that causes direct damage. We have cutting down mangroves to make hotels and things like that. We know how important those mangroves are for habitat. Explosives, interesting. Okay, so this is once again developing areas. If we're touching the corals, remember that will damage them. Dropping pollution and sewage and stuff like this into the oceans, all of that is direct. Indirect ways would be water from the rivers, surface runoff that might have fertilizers or insecticides, things like that, coming from way upstream. All right, so those are the indirect ways. We saw this picture for a while. Sorry, yeah, it's very sad. This is obviously a seal who's been caught in a net of some sort, and of course they need to breathe air. So when he gets stuck underwater, he drowned. So that's one of the effects we have, of course. On our coral reefs, we've talked about this with our stressed out coral. The zooxanthellae will leave and we'll end up with some bleached coral which eventually causes their death, right? They don't make enough or catch enough food at this point in time. Probably they're stressed out because the food supply is low. Tourists who are touching them, aquarium, fish hunters, things like this can all cause damage to our coral reefs, which is very sad. Here's healthy versus bleached coral. You know, if you find a piece of coral on the beach, it's almost always bleached already because it was unhealthy and cracked loose. Pollution, of course, we have like the stuff coming in, you know, dropping plastics, sewage coming down, fertilizers from the water sources above, from farmland above, oil. We have natural pollution from volcanoes, floods, and tsunamis. So seeing a beach that looks like this is rather, disquieting. We don't like to see all that trash on the beach. There's like a fisherman's net or something. Here we have, beautiful beach, plants and things like that, and then all this trash in there. One of the things that I've done with a marine biology class in the past is we actually had a beach cleanup day when we went down there. This is when I had a class where we stayed more than just one night. It was a much smaller class, not through ODA. And anyway, we spent some time picking up trash on the beach and recording actually the trash that we got. We did it officially for the Parks Department. Let's watch a little video.
Plastic pollution is one of the biggest threats the oceans face today. But how much do we really know about it? On its mission to solve this problem, the Ocean Cleanup just published the most advanced research ever on the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the largest accumulation zone of ocean plastic on the planet. Scientists have been studying this area since the 1970s, mostly by dragging a small sampling net through the ocean. The Ocean's Cleanup's researchers believe this method was valid only for small debris and covered too small an area to reliably measure larger debris. So, in the summer of 2015, the Ocean Cleanup launched the Mega Expedition, crossing the patch with 30 boats simultaneously. In addition to using many small nets, 2 giant trawls were towed behind the fleet's mothership. In total, they brought back 1.2 million plastic samples. All were hand-counted, identified, and classified by type and size. A monumental task, taking a team of lab technicians 2 years to complete. However, the largest debris appeared less frequent and more scattered. Quantifying the debris required an area 20 times larger than the Mega Expedition to be covered, something only possible from the sky. The Ocean Cleanup ran the first ever aerial surveys of a garbage patch by converting a former military aircraft into a high-tech research platform. Cutting-edge sensors allowed them to reconstruct the 3D shapes of large debris to calculate their mass. The results of all this work? The Great Pacific Garbage Patch measures 1.6 million square kilometers. That is 3 times the size of France. The patch contains 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic, which equals 250 pieces for every human in the world. The total mass amounts to 80,000 tons, 4 to 16 times more than previous estimates. 92% of this mass is made up of the larger objects, all of which are destined to fragment into dangerous microplastics over the next few decades, if left under the effect of sun and waves. And because the findings show that pollution in the patch is increasing exponentially, the plastic is unlikely to go away by itself. These results paint a new picture of the problem and provide a baseline for the cleanup of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, set to start in 2018.
All right, so the Ocean Cleanup. I will confess that this course has actually made me much more aware of how much plastic I use, and I try to really cut down on my one-use plastic stuff, like water bottles and stuff. I've started using, my big metal cups and glass water bottles and, reusable stuff like that. Furthermore, they say that when we're drinking out of those plastic bottles, some of that plastic is getting into us, residues of that stuff. So anyway, it's just made me try to be a more responsible and good steward of the planet. Oh, it looks like I have another video. Here we go.
8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the sea from land every year. The equivalent of 5 plastic bags filled with trash for every foot of coastline in the world. Across our ocean, plastic trash flows into circulation, dispersed almost everywhere, but concentrating in huge swaths in the midst of global currents, breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces, ingested by species across the marine world, and sinking to the bottom of the sea.
Anyone can make plastic anywhere in the world and sell it anywhere else in the world. There's no design paradigm, there's no barriers. In order to solve the plastic packaging problem, we need to effectively rethink the entire system. From one which is linear, i.e. take, make, dispose, to one where it can be recovered and fed back into the economy as a valuable plastic material, or one where it is biobenign and it can enter the environment. The ultimate goal of the new plastics economy is to design an economy where plastic packaging never becomes waste. And to do that, we need every single player in the chain to change the way that they do things.
But marine pollution comes in many forms. Industrial, agricultural, and urban waste also sweep into the sea, fueling explosions of algae that rob marine ecosystems of the oxygen they need to survive. With sustained pollution, these areas become dead zones, which already exist in more than 400 locations across the globe. But nutrient pollution can be managed through change in major contributing systems like agriculture.
If you eat, you're involved in agriculture. So it's a problem that all of us have to work together to solve. Soil health is critical for water quality. It's the first thing we have to focus on. Here on the farm, organic matter is the key thing that we try to improve. The more organic matter you have in the soil, the better the soil can hold on to nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen. Organic matter keeps it from leaching out of the soil. It grabs onto it, and that's good for the farmer, but it's also good for water quality in the bay. For any farmer to change their system is tricky, and it takes a lot of work. I think all farmers want to. It's learning different processes, practices that allow you to do it effectively that becomes a key.
All right, once again, more food for thought there on the taking care of our planet. So this is an organization called 4Ocean, and a little over a year ago, I first heard about these guys, and I started a subscription to pay them monthly and then every month they actually sent me a bracelet. All right, so I did this with y'all in mind, and here we go. Yeah, oops. Well, the picture's not in there. But let's watch what 4Ocean does, and then I'll tell you about the bracelets.
The story begins when a mysterious yellow bottle washed up on a shoreline. Then 2 yellow bottles. 3 yellow bottles? You get the point. Tons of yellow bottles are washing onto South Florida shorelines. Why? At first glance, they could be mustard bottles. Look closely and you'll notice a clue. Vinaigrette. Confused? Hang in there. This story affects you. Right now, our Earth faces a monumental crisis, and that crisis is plastic. Plastic plays many roles. It contains things, it carries things, it connects things, it's used for just about everything. But did you realize 1 ton of plastic enters the Earth's oceans every 60 seconds? Think about that. 1 ton every 60 seconds. That's a lot of plastic. Meet Alex. He's 26, lives to surf, and taught his dog to do this. And this is Andrew. Andrew surfs whenever possible. He's 27, and his idea of fun involves these guys. Both love the ocean, met on a boat dock, and started this, a company dedicated to cleaning the ocean 7 days a week. And this is Haiti, a small cluster of Caribbean islands widely known for a devastating earthquake in 2010. Now meet Ed. Ed is Haiti's unofficial superhero. He's hell-bent on saving his country and its people. So when Ed met Alex and Andrew, it felt like destiny, and a partnership was born. So Ed, Alex, and Andrew boarded a boat in search of plastic. On this journey, they discovered an island inhabited by a boy whose favorite toy was a discarded keyboard and whose backyard looked like this. See anything familiar? Yellow vinaigrette bottles everywhere. How did they get here? Like this. Haiti has over 10 million people sharing a space roughly the size of New Jersey. And doing as humans do, they consume and discard the plastic from which they consumed. Except in Haiti, the only place to put that plastic is on the street. And when it rains, it pours, and when it pours in Haiti, this happens. Rivers of plastic push through the city, out into the ocean, and land on a nearby island. Except often, that island isn't near at all. Sometimes that plastic sails across the Atlantic Ocean and ends up on Florida's coastlines. And sometimes, two local surfers get fed up finding these plastic bottles on their beaches, do some quick research, discover a trash-riddled Caribbean island named Haiti, brainstorm a way to help that island, and then travel there and meet Ed. And together they devise a plan to pay locals to pick up trash, build Haiti's best recycling infrastructure, and inspire a movement to restore our oceans. Today, we are for ocean, and our mission has spread. From large cleanups in Haiti to stimulating Bali's economy through recycling, our goal is simple: clean the Earth's oceans, one yellow bottle, one piece of plastic, and 1 pound at a time.
Okay, here we go. I put the picture back in. Okay, so there it is. My idea, of course, was us to be at the coast wearing our bracelets and doing our coast stuff. I know, yeah. So, but what I have this right here. So it's like a packet of stuff, and it has a little pouch with a little bracelet in it. And the bracelet is made from plastic from the sea and glass beads from the sea. They've turned glass into beads. You get a sticker that says For Ocean. You get a card saying what the bracelet represents. And then this little sticker right here that represents 1 pound of plastic. So for every bracelet I have, it represents 1 pound of plastic being pulled from the ocean. All right, so like I said, I have one of these for you. I was going to hand them out to you randomly, but I'll tell you what I have on the list. And if you're interested, I've already mailed one of them out. I can mail them out to you, or however we're going to work that out. Okay, here's what I have. I have a beluga whale. I have starfish, sea otters, sea turtles, the albatross, the Galapagos Islands, a whale shark, Florida estuaries, the leatherback turtle, penguins, octopus, jellyfish, and seahorse. So if any of those sound familiar to it, I'll probably print those out. I'll probably write those out in your email. And y'all let me know. Okay, they just kind of, you pull the strings and they tighten up on your wrist, that kind of thing. I wear mine, wear it in the pool, that kind of thing. So anyway, it just shows like, awareness and taking care of the environment and that kind of thing. All right, back to our filling in our blanks. Okay, we got a big word here, eutrophication. This is when we have excessive algae growth as a result of increased nutrients. Okay, so fertilizers, they seem like a good thing, right? So the fertilizers, however, will cause these algae to grow, and they'll grow so much it'll turn into a bloom. And remember, we've talked about blooms, how we can't even swim in the ocean when there's a bloom because it's so nasty. And it really just takes over, it kind of covers the entire surface. And while it's, of course, making oxygen, it is pushing it out into the air and blocking those things beneath from getting its oxygen. Okay, so that will cause the creatures, the fish and other creatures to lack oxygen. So that's obviously a problem. It causes hypoxia. That's when the oxygen level is so low that it creates these things called dead zones. All right, so oxygen levels are low. Now, it does help when there's a tide, so the ocean's moving, so that helps a little bit. But if we need to try to reduce the amount of organic matter that's in there. All right, so here we go. This is how it happens. There's fertilizer spread on the land, right up here. It gets washed down through the soil and then transported from a lake or even underground sometimes down into the ocean. It causes an overgrowth of these aquatic plants and algae. The sunlight, therefore, cannot, so then, the bottom of the lake, so it's talking about this algae will die, and the bacteria decomposes the algae, taking up all the oxygen, making the lake anoxic, okay, causing organisms to die. Okay, so that's why we need to be careful. And the only way to really battle this, of course, would be through some sort of legislative action, because these chemicals, they're small at this point. You can't like catch them, right? Here's a picture of some of that overgrowth right here, which causes, you don't want to go swimming in that. There's no fish underneath there. So then notice how it's hugging the coast, because that's where it's coming from. So there are all these dead zones in the world. You can see those dots right there. We saw a little bit of that in the video. And sadly, here we go. That covers the largest dead zone in the world. It's the 7,000 square miles in the Gulf of Mexico, right there, right here in our backyard of Texas. Very sad. There have been oil spills out there, but the dead zones will change from season to season. Now, you may be wondering, well, wait a minute. I've been down to the coast, and there's plenty of creatures swimming out there. That's true, so it's not completely dead. The problem is right next to the coast right there, we have the issue with this dead zone. I think I have a picture of it right there. This shows it. Notice it's worse right up here, mostly because the Mississippi River, right, is right here. Yeah, washing stuff down. So it gets a little better as we get down through Texas right here. But but still, it reaches out a little bit like that. So it's causing there to be a lot less animal life there than could be. All right, it changes over time depending on currents, depending on all that. I'm hoping it might be changing because we've worked on some of our legislation to keep so much from being dumped in there. But runoff is hard to control. One of the things we could do, of course, is to use a better type of fertilizer that would be considered organic. I don't know why farmers don't want to use organic. I don't know if it has to do with price, if it's too expensive, or maybe they just don't work as well as the high-powered poisons. So here's the dead zone forming. This is similar to the thing we just looked at right here. Okay, so the sun, the heating, this kind of thing. And then we just see how the water becomes deprived of oxygen below. Now remember, this is going to be hugging the coast right there. So therefore we have to go further out to find some good life. Synthetic pollutants and substances that don't decompose. All right, so DDT is one of those. It's now outlawed. We don't use it in America anymore. Sometimes it'll be found in other countries of the world. Non-biodegradable means that a substance will not decompose naturally. Okay, so it will never break down. Plastic breaks down, but very, very slowly. Bioaccumulation. This is the buildup of toxins. So when animals, sadly, what happens is the animals, these poisons will get into their bodies. Especially, sometimes they'll actually eat the plastic. They don't really realize that it's not food, right? Or it's part of the food and they eat it. And anyway, they'll think it's those small pieces of plastic. Sometimes they'll confuse to be parts of, floating, food, Biomagnification, this is the increase of the concentration of a toxin as it moves up the trophic level. Now, the difference here, bioaccumulation would just be the accumulation from exposure. Biomagnification is actually when a big fish eats a smaller fish, and then another big fish comes along, and it's the bigger the fish, the more that we will find a substance that will not break down inside that body of that fish. For instance, mercury is the best example of this. I probably have a picture. No, I don't. Okay. The mercury, what will happen is a small fish will get a little bit of exposure to mercury. The mercury will stay in the fish's body and, forever. And then another fish eats it. So that fish, who has its own amount of mercury from its body, because it's naturally found in the oceans, will eat a fish with mercury, and that'll double their mercury content. And the bigger the fish, probably the best example would be tuna. Tuna get really, really large. They've eaten so many fish with mercury, the mercury builds up inside of them. When we eat the tuna, we get the mercury. All right, PCBs, dioxins, and heavy metals. So paints, plastics, things like this will build up in the bodies. Those are all washing in. They're not biodegradable. They'll stay in their body. Dioxins will rest in the fat, okay? So non-biodegradable paper mills. These will bioaccumulate. And so remember, bioaccumulate is when they're getting exposed to it themselves. So here we go. Mercury, lead, copper are metals that accumulate in the bodies of organisms. As they're eaten, okay, these toxic metals move up the food web. I think now my picture's coming in. Where's my picture? More hazards. We have TBT, which is types of paint. They put it on ships to keep the barnacles off, so it's like a barnacle, resistant or whatever. And then we have radioactive wastes. Radioactive waste coming from power plants, that are using radioactive fuels to run them. We got to get rid of that waste sometime, and some of it's ending up in our oceans. That is terrible. That's the one problem with nuclear power, is we got to figure out a way to dispose of that waste where it doesn't end up in our oceans, in our farmlands, in our atmosphere, things like this. Some people have actually thought of the idea of maybe launching it out into space somewhere so we could pollute it out there. So how can we fix this problem? Well, like I mentioned before, using fewer fertilizers, adjust the timing, okay, that would limit the runoff because of rainy season or the wet season, that kind of thing. Animal wastes, try to keep them away from large waterways so that it doesn't wash into the water sources. Monitoring septic systems, making sure they're running efficiently. We have new, ones that do some composting, this kind of thing. We want to reduce that discharge into the groundwater. Industrial practices could be limited by law, and therefore the chemicals that they're manufacturing won't be dumped right into a water source. So I'll figure out a different way to mitigate that problem. Our synthetic pollutants like DDT, which is outlawed. This is a repeat slide. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see about chemical contamination with our brown pelican right here.
Brown pelicans are the smallest of the pelicans, but they're still pretty big as birds go. They feed almost exclusively on fish, eating about 3 or 4 pounds a day in the wild. As the text tells you, brown pelicans were brought nearly to extinction by the use of the pesticide DDT. You might wonder why it was brown pelicans that were so affected by DDT. Well, interestingly enough, DDT causes birds to lay eggs that have thinner than normal shells. This is a problem for brown pelicans because they incubate their eggs by standing on them. You see, their feet are rich in blood vessels, which make them warm and perfect for egg incubation. The thinner the egg shells, the more likely the mother is to crush them as she incubates them, which makes the brown pelican especially sensitive to DDT.
All right. Now our natural pollution.
The volcano you're seeing erupting in this video is not Mount St. Helens. It's a volcano in Nicaragua. It does give you a good sense of how much pollution volcanoes spew into the atmosphere. Now let's take a closer look. You can see that the volcano is belching out a lot of hot magma, but it's also belching out a lot of smoke. The smoke is composed of a lot of particulates that go into the atmosphere and eventually settle out, much of it settling out into the ocean. This is a big source of natural pollution. In fact, to give you some perspective, think about this. A single volcanic explosion at Krakatau, Indonesia in 1883 threw more particulate matter into the atmosphere than all the industrial smoke ever generated by human beings. Volcanoes not only produce a lot of particulate matter pollution, they also produce poisonous gases like sulfur oxides. Not only are these gases poisonous, but they can also mix with water in the atmosphere and produce acid rain. To give you some idea of how much sulfur oxides a volcano produces, in October of 2004, the Mount St. Helens volcano became active again. It didn't explosively erupt like it did in the 1980s, but it was active. While active, it started spewing sulfur oxides into the atmosphere. Over the time period it was active, it was the state's largest polluter. None of the industries in the state of Washington were producing anywhere near the amount of sulfur oxides that the volcano was producing.
All right. And there's not a single thing we can do about that. Not a single thing we can do about those volcanoes. Trust God. All right, so here's my biomagnification picture I've been looking for this whole time. All right, here it is. Okay, so we have our small fish, or these are going to be our zooplankton, right? So we have some buildup of any toxins in there. Let's say DDT at this particular point. And then our plankton, right? Get it? So that's here. Then our small fish eat that. Then our other fish eat that. I don't know what those guys are supposed to be. And then see that red line that they're showing on here? So there's a little red. That's where the poison is. Builds up here, it builds up, and it doesn't go away. And then it builds up, oh, that's a gar right there. And then our herring, and then our dolphin. So you see our dolphin ends up with a lot of it in there. Okay, so this is biomagnification, which is different from the bioaccumulation. This is bioaccumulation, and then other things that they get a hold of when they eat it themselves. You see what I'm saying? And here's another one right here, just showing you how we have our, this says methyl mercury right there, and we have our krill, then our salmon, and it starts to build up, and then the trout, the tuna right here, and then our albacore, a big tuna right there. Yeah. Okay, that's called biomagnification. So what can we do? Let's look at some artificial reef ideas right here.
This video is showing you part of the reef system that is forming around the remains of a sunken airplane. Now remember, coral need warm water, sunlight, and a hard substrate on which to grow. The remains of the airplane provide that substrate, so coral are growing. This, of course, attracts other marine life. Because human-made structures like airplanes and boats provide such a great substrate on which coral can grow, many organizations actually intentionally sink both airplanes and boats so that they can begin a coral reef ecosystem. Now please realize, a lot of work goes into sinking a ship or an airplane. After all, such structures contain a lot of environmentally hazardous chemicals like oil. Environmental hazards like that must be completely cleaned out before a structure can be sunk in order to start a reef ecosystem. If all of that is done properly, a sunken ship or a sunken airplane can really be a strong benefit to a local marine ecosystem. It can also provide an excellent place for recreational diving. Because artificial reefs hold so much promise for helping the marine environment, there's actually an international conference of scientists called the International Conference on Artificial Reefs and Artificial Habitats. Organizers of the conference say it is designed to promote international exchange of information on the use of artificial reefs to enhance and manage marine and freshwater resources and protect the natural environment.
Okay, so there's at least something we can do. You know, down at our coast, you may have been down there where they had the big jetties that had been formed. You know, those were man-made. We took giant blocks of granite, which of course are natural, and we stuck them out there, and now fishermen go out on there, and now there's seamen on top of it, but they put the base of it was made with this granite. And so guess what? That granite serves as a little artificial reef. Typically when I take students down there, we can look down in the cracks of those and find little sea anemone and things like that growing in there. So that's at least something we can do. All right, so back to our underwater exploration. I believe there's a little part in your book or text or something about going and still exploring more and learning more about the oceans. Okay, so all of this would be toward not just gathering information about organisms that maybe we don't know about and things like that, but also gathering information about how the seas are getting worse or getting better, depending on how we're treating them. Okay, so collecting data to give us a little encouragement or to give us a little incentive to work on the oceans even more. All right, so we have these special subs. They're more and more often they're making these really amazing improvements to these so we can find more and more about the ocean, what's going on. Look at all those tools that are on the back of that right there that help it to collect data. And science, as you know, is all about collecting data. So here we have Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. This is one this is Alvin. We've talked about Alvin before. So Alvin right here. Then we've had the Deep Sea Challenger was the one. That was Cameron, right? James Cameron going down that low. But these guys going down deeper and deeper into the ocean. Okay, so that brought me to an idea of what is a submarine, how does a submarine work, which is going to end up what our lab would have been today. Okay, so the idea here is that the submarine will have a tank in which it'll fill with water. Water will make it heavy, and that'll make it sink down. Okay, so here we have the air inside here naturally, right? And compressed air in here. And what happens is when we want to rise up to the surface, the air will squeeze out through here and push the water out through these little deals here and keep it compressed so it rises to the surface. Okay, so the valves open, the water is pushed out by air pressure, and then it rises. Okay, and then when we let the water in, we call that ballast, then it's going to sink. Okay, so that's just it's pretty simple the way that works. Of course, mostly what we use submarines, why we have these investigative ones, these ones for marine biology, most of the ones we use are for military purposes, right? We have an Army that, or a Navy rather, that takes them down under the water. What I have is a little remote control submarine. It looks just like this. And what I would do is I would bring this with a little tank of water, and then we would just run our little, so we'd make it dive and come back up. It's real simple. What it has is down here is a little valve that when you push the button, it pushes that valve up. And when it goes up, it just allows water into that area, which causes it to sink. And then it has a little rotor right here, so you push it go. So I use it in the pool with my grandkids and stuff like that. So that's what we would have been doing today. So yeah, that would have been it for our lab, y'all. So these last few modules in this curriculum tend to not have a whole lot of lab stuff to do, and so that makes us have a nice short recording. And you should have all your blanks filled in right now. And oh yeah, I put this in again. This was remember to remind you how we're going to do, where you go to slideshow and you do record, and then you can record your own thing. And I've told you in the past, I've had students a student who did something about the submarines, so I'd like the submarine. If you pick submarines, make sure and do something about one that's doing research for marine biology, rather than say one that's a military one, that kind of thing. Okay. I've had students in the past pick a certain organism. I remember one girl did something on puffins, and we learned all this stuff about puffins, and they're so cute and this kind of thing. So it's kind of fun. Remember, only about 5 slides long or so, and then you'll just give me a little, more pictures than words. If you want a video in there, y'all, that will be probably difficult for you. The reason why I didn't send all of your PowerPoints to you via this way I'm showing you by making the slideshow and recording it is it wouldn't allow me to play the videos. I'm not sure why. Instead of trying to figure it out, I was panicking, and my son said, "Hey, Mom, do this recording and do the YouTube channel." So that's what I did. It seems to be working okay. So I didn't take the time to figure out how to do it. Okay, so if you want to take the time to figure out how to do it, that's fine. You don't need a video in there. You can just give me a few words, pictures, fewer words, and teach me something I don't already know. All right, gang. So I will see all of y'all next week then via Zoom. And remember to let me know if you're interested in those bracelets. Okay, very good. Bye.